Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates and welcome back to another video. We've had the international break, we've had FA Cup weekend now. It's back to FPL action midweek. Game week 30 is here. A lot of injured players for a lot of managers. Let's get into our teams and show you what we're planning on doing for this upcoming game week.
Okay, then. So, yeah, a big sort of international break. It felt like it lasted forever. Obviously, we had the FA Cup weekend as well, which is now determined who's going to be playing in those FA Cup semi finals, which is big news for the blank and double potential game weeks that are coming up. So, obviously, if you don't know already, there are a few teams that will be blanking going into that game week 34, and that's basically anyone who is in the FA Cup semi finals, barring probably Nottingham Forest. What I would say is that they're not all confirmed. If you want to know all of the information, I'd probably head over to our Instagram and you can check it out on there. We've got a dedicated post to who's blanking and when the teams might be doubling. But the key assets for me that I'll be paying attention to is probably Arsenal for the main part. And then I'm sure Ben will touch on some more later on in this video. But going into this game week, it's game week 30. Like Ben mentions, me and him have both been slapped with a good few injuries this week. So plans at the moment are just to wait and see, gain as much information as possible for that Tuesday night deadline. And then, yeah, basically go from there. There is genuine potential that me and Ben could both play our wildcard this week. We both might not play our wildcard this week. We'll have to wait and see how bad those injuries are. So, yeah, getting into this defence, Pickford in goal, Liverpool away. Obviously, very not ideal fixture for him. Obviously, save points will be there, but yeah, not expecting too much. But he's been pretty decent since I brought him in with those doubles that Everton had. Dorgu is back from suspension for United with Forest away. To be honest, the defence is not great. Just poor fixtures, to be honest, all round. Dorgu obviously carries quite a bit of attacking threat on that wing back position for United, which he's shown in the Europa League as well. So I don't mind the fixture too much. I just don't think there's, from an attacking point of view, obviously if Chris Wood's out, it's a big plus in terms of United clean sheet, but I don't expect them to still keep a clean sheet at the City ground. We've got Cresswell next, who I brought in last week. He was part of my hit. He was brought in due to the funds. I needed a 3.9 million defender. Couldn't afford a 4 million. He was benched last week out. I'm not sure if that was more of a tactical play in terms of needing more physical presence for West Ham or not. So I'll probably start him this week and just hope that he gets that start against Wolves. If not, I've got Colwill off the bench, which isn't the end of the world with Tottenham at home. Obviously, Gabriel wraps up the defence with Fulham at home. I don't think it's necessarily a lock on the clean sheet. Fulham obviously a decent side that scored goals. Obviously struggled against Palace at the weekend, so I'd expecting a bounce back from that. And then obviously now they're going to have to basically charge on for those Europeans places because they've got nothing left to play for. So what's the thoughts on that defence, Ben?
Yeah, so a little bit of a tough week really for your defence. Obviously not ideal with the Cresswell minutes risk. Dorgu, could very well concede against Forest even if Chris Wood is out. And Pickford, of course, I'm not expecting the clean sheet there. So all in all, not expecting too many points here from your team for this week, at least in the defensive aspect. But it's almost a case of weighing up sort of whether you can get through this week with the team that you've got on the defence that you got, or whether you sort of capitalise on the wild card this week with less information compared to next week. So it's going to be a tough balancing act for you.
Yeah, indeed. And then moving on to the midfield, then it does look a little bit better here. With Bruno Fernandes at first, Nottingham Forest away. Obviously, pre-international break, he was on absolute fire. Came away obviously with that 17-pointer last game week, which was huge. Gave me a decent green arrow for that blank game week, which was massive considering I didn't use that free hit. So yeah, happy to have him for this week. Again, the fixture's not fantastic. Forest defensively are very sound, but if Man United are going to score, it's definitely going to have some input from the main man himself. Brian Mbeumo's up next, Newcastle away. Hopefully they've got a bit of a hangover from those big party and celebrations from their cup win. To be honest, I think he's a sellable asset if you didn't have any injuries. I don't think the fixtures are there to be kept. I also don't think the form is that great, but obviously when that last happened with Brian Mbeumo, he came in and just scored for numerous games on the bounce. So yeah, I'll hold him for now. But obviously a lot more issues pending for me, so no issue keeping him right now. Jarrod Bowen next up, Wolves away this week, could be a nice differential, to be honest. Looking forward to seeing how he does there. since I brought him in, not really set the world alight. I think that's probably same could be said for Graham Potter since coming in for West Ham. Sort of steady Eddie, I'd say. Picked up a couple of returns, but nothing too crazy. So hoping for something decent against Wolves. It's a very decent fixture on paper. We then have Mo Salah on the vice captaincy at the moment. Everton at home, obviously, is a good fixture for Liverpool, despite obviously that 2-2 draw earlier in the season. Obviously, Liverpool pre-international break were looking pretty poor, to be honest. So I think the break came at a good time for them. Be interesting to see if they can sort of turn that around and now just sort of clinch that Premier League title, which I think everyone is expecting them to do. What's the thoughts on the midfield, Ben?
Yeah, I mean it's a strong midfield, to be honest, and there's definitely a big difference between those wild card and those not. In terms of a lot of these that are wild card and will miss out on the Mbeumo's, Burns, Bruno's, etc. Which I think is a good thing for you in this situation because all three of those assets can get returns. Bruno's been very consistent, and Burmo's had his holes, and Bowen generally sort of is quite consistent for West Ham. Of course, Salah at the moment, vice captaincy. I imagine that's probably a consideration that you might look to change going into this game week, just depending on various team news that we get over Monday and Tuesday during the day. But yeah, all in all, sort of fairly strong in terms of the midfield.
And then moving on to the forward line, and this is where the problems sort of arise. Obviously, we've got Chris Wood up first. We mentioned him when talking about the United assets. Nuno came out and was not very positive in a post-match press conference about sort of injury update regarding him. So, to be honest with Nuno, he's quite vague in general. I think throughout this season, he's not really been too definitive. So, it's one of those ones that I might just hold and I'd rather transfer out Dango, for example, and have a playing midfielder rather than Chris Wood getting taken out because I can't move him up is my issue at the moment. I have 0 in the bank, so someone like a Mateta for me would really be off the cards at the moment. So he's one to monitor. Hopefully he does play, to be honest. I mean, there's a clash for me in my team anyway, so it's a bit 50-50 whether I want him or not. Obviously, Haaland's next. He came off injured today. I didn't see the game personally, but apparently he landed awkwardly, tried to play on but couldn't, and then got taken off. So it'll be interesting to see if they risk him. Realistically, Leicester at home, you should imagine City should be able to get the job done there without Erling Haaland. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. At the moment, he is on my captaincy. If I know, even if he's half available for that game, to be honest, I'm more than happy to go with him over Salah just for the differential pick in that regard. My rank's at 450k right now. The way that the doubles and the blank game weeks have sort of panned out with the FA Cup weekend, that it's made it quite easy to navigate for those even without chips. So I'm going to have to go some way different along the line if I really want to try and boost this rank up anymore. And then João Pedro, again, obviously played it over the weekend in the FA Cup. He came off the bench, had I think a bandage or something, or he's wrapped up on his knee. So again, I think there's a question mark in regards to match fitness to him. I think the benefit there though is that obviously he came off the bench and he didn't get all those minutes that maybe other players did, despite obviously going into extra time. So maybe a silver lining there. In regards to the bench, obviously Dango's minutes are limited. Colwill likely to come on for Aaron Cresswell, and then obviously Mikalenko, Liverpool away. Probably don't want to double up of that Everton defence this week. What's the thoughts on the forward line, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, there's a potential couple of issues there with Haaland. I don't think he plays a part in game week 30. Just based on precautionary measures, just don't think the turnaround time, it's that quick that they'll sort of risk him, especially when, City are playing Leicester. It's not like a big team. If it was, a big midweek game against a higher tier side, then maybe there'd be more likelihood, but it lessens the chance of him playing. For me, Chris Wood, again, like you said, very vague in terms of what we found out from him. And for me, João Pedro's a non-issue. In my opinion, he starts going forwards, but let's just see, because Brighton have been known to sort of rotate their attackers. Of course, we saw Jorginho Ruta come off injured, which is good for the minutes of João Pedro. So let's just wait and see with him. Of course, like you said, on the bench, a very high likelihood that Cole will be coming in. And then, there's the issue of Dango Atara. Mikalenko had a bit of a knock in the international break as well. So, there is a couple of issues to navigate there. Okay, so moving on into my team, ranked currently at 188k in the world. As you can see, we've got the double up of Arsenal defence, which I'm really liking for this week, and almost sort of the thoughts of a lot of managers who are wildcarding. Like Josh said, the same situation for me is I've got a few injuries, and if we wait and see on these the press conferences, and if any news comes out on some of these players, it may force my hand to play a wild card. If not, I'm going to try and see my way through it and gain as much information for an ideal scenario of like a couple of my players are fit, and I can string together a full 11 and play a wild card later. Worst case scenario, I'll hit my wild card, and that's not the end of the world either. So I'm not too sort of against that. Trent Alexander-Arnold is one of those, and of course we've seen so much news over the international break about his future at Liverpool. I think that also will impact his potential playing minutes going forwards, let alone the knock that he's got as well. And then Nico Williams, fairly happy with him in there as well, albeit Forest went to penalties. So, Josh, what's the thoughts there on the back line?
Yeah, I think obviously Arsenal doubled up is really good long term. I think a lot of managers want a triple up going forward. So, yeah, not too bad. Obviously, fixture this week, I don't think it's an easy one. Obviously, I think Arsenal struggled against them in the reverse tie earlier in the season. So we have to wait and see on that. Trent, it's a difficult one because, like, you'd imagine he'd be match fit by now because the injury that he sustained wasn't that great pre-international break. So, yeah, I think he comes back in. There's always going to be that sort of paper talk about, it seems inevitable move to Real Madrid at this stage. So, yeah, I don't know. For me, obviously, I'd start him. I don't think there'd be too much of a risk with him at the moment. Nico Williams, he's playing United, not West Ham United. That's just a graphic error there. Again, not too bad of a fixture. United going forwards in general have been pretty poor scoring goals. I know obviously they pre-international break they scored 3 against Leicester, but Nottingham Forest are a different kettle of fish in that regards.
So moving on into the midfield, and we do have Salah on the captaincy for this week. It was on Haaland until I saw that injury on Sunday. So Salah is firmly on the captaincy, regardless of sort of updates. I think now that's fairly set for me. Cliver this week with a really interesting fixture, and I do think, of course, with the penalty potential, he's probably at the moment the best Bournemouth midfielder to go for, even despite being that little bit extra. We've also got Mburmo in there who, could pop up with a big double-digit haul, could pop up with a one-pointer. You just don't know with him. And then Morgan Rogers as well to finalise that midfield. Being fairly strong, of course, Rogers won that penalty in their FA Cup game at the weekend. So, still getting the minutes, still fairly secure in that, and still one of a really good value in terms of player. Little bit less owned because Villa's run was a little bit more difficult going forward. So, more than happy to own him for at least this week before sort of hopefully reassessing for that wild card next week. Josh, what's the thoughts on the midfield?
Yeah, I quite like the midfield. Clive pick's really nice. I know he's highly owned, but he'll be pretty differential, I think, going into this week. So I think a lot of managers might use their wild card. I know the fixture this week for Bournemouth is good, but there is no sign of a double in the near future. So that might put people off bringing him in. Rodgers as well, obviously, minutes-wise, he's nailed. He's like Unai Emery's number one player pretty much at this stage, and Brighton away, he's not necessarily a bad fixture from an attacking point of view. They do concede chances, so yeah, there's always a chance with him, and I always feel that he's more suited to those games against better opposition as well, and it seems like where he gets his sort of biggest returns so far this season.
Hey, and moving on into the strike force, we've got a similar situation to Josh as we've got all 3 of the same strikers, Haaland, João Pedro and Chris Wood. It makes the decision to wildcard or not a difficult one because, as you can also see on the bench, it's not the strongest of benches either. Dango Atara's minutes risk we know he's going to be on the bench for Bournemouth going forwards, at least in the short term. Howard Bellis is yellow flagged, although I think he's okay. We'll just have to wait and see in the press conferences. And then Mikolenko, of course, like I said, picked up a little bit of a knock in the international break. Whether that's going to impact his minutes going forward, hopefully not. So it puts me in a bit of an interesting position. I'm hoping to put out a full 11 this week, but if it's confirmed that I'm not going to be able to do that, then that will force my hand into playing that wild card, which I think is a sensible thing to do. If you can get a strong full 11, I'd recommend holding off the wild card one more week and playing it next week. But if it's a case you are struggling to put together a team for this week, then absolutely the wild card is going to be a necessity. Josh, what's the thoughts on the front line and the overall team?
Yeah, obviously same issues as me. So I think time's going to be our biggest friend this week, and just sort of getting those press conference quotes, seeing the updates. I think Haaland is going to be an interesting one. Obviously, City have nothing else to play for, so when they risking him? I don't know personally. We just have to wait and see. It's a tough one. I think Chris Wood as well is equally as tough. If I had to put money on it, I don't see Chris Wood playing against United. Just judging from Nuno's sort of body language in that presser, he looked negative when asked about it. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Would those two being out be worth a wild card? I'm not sure. Obviously, there's no real coverage for you on your bench, so you're pretty much the same situation as me, to be honest. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Hopefully, only one of them is sort of confirmed out, and that we can, you'll be able to bypass this week with, one of them being out and just sort of moving on one. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, tough situation at the minute. Okay, then, so that wraps up the Game Week 30 team reveals. There's no transfer targets this week just because we wanted to wait for the FA Cup information. And obviously the deadline is then on Tuesday. So quick turnaround. Obviously the same schedule will sort of be in place after for Game Week 31 deadline. We'll have a wildcard video out for that week as well. So make sure you stay subscribed to the FPL graduates.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.